Hello everybody, welcome to Red Tool House. Today we want to talk about how to take full advantage of a home flock when you end up with more roosters than you expected. So come along, let's scan the flock. So chickens, of course, are the staple of most homesteads, even small backyards in suburban and urban areas. People are raising chickens. Municipalities are letting go of some laws that keep that from happening. So more and more people are getting chickens. And of course, you can go down to your box stores, you can go to your feed stores, and you can buy chickens. You can order them online. And a lot of those requirements for those towns, of course, is you can't have any roosters. But sometimes when you go to the feed store, somebody hasn't identified things properly, or even when you mail order, some things haven't been identified properly, and before you know it, you got somebody cutting loose in here that ain't no egg layer. So we ran into a little bit of that with our flock. We're now up to about 112 chickens, last count, I believe. And some of those were mail order. Some of those we got, of course, at a local store, feed store. And then some we even incubated ourselves. And of course, when you incubate and hatch your own, you know that percentage is about 55 to 60% of those eggs are going to hatch to be roosters. So we currently have 5 roosters on farm with these 2 flocks. So we've got the mobile coop and the chicken church flock. And that's probably 1 or 2 roosters too many. But when we incubated about 1.5 years ago, we ended up with a whole herd of roosters. We had I believe we had 12 roosters, and some we gave away, some just disappeared, we'll put it that way. But when it came time to process our broilers, we thought, hey, let's go ahead and process these roosters as well. Since we had all the processing equipment here, we'll process them and then we'll just put them in the freezer and we'll deal with them later. Well, now's the time to deal with them. And I want to show you how even a tough old bird that may not have a lot of value on your farm could actually turn into some really great stuff. So we're going to take the next 2 days, a gloomy, rainy days, kind of cold in this spring, early spring in West Virginia, and we're going to dive into this. So all right, the situation we found ourselves in is a freezer full of a variety of birds. We have our broilers, and then of course these roosters that we were talking about, and had those frozen. So I had 6 roosters that I knew I wanted to get rid of, and knowing that they were roosters, they were mature. They were not really broiler breed, they were egg-laying breeds. Black Australorp, I believe, were some of these. So it's just one of those things where they were much older. I believe they're 20, 24 weeks old, which obviously makes a horrible frying bird, very tough. So what I did is took all 6 birds out of the freezer. These were whole carcasses that we had butchered. They were skin on, they had gone through our plucker. So I put one at a time in our Instant Pot with 2 cups of water, set that up to run and cook. I think it was about 30 some minutes that it actually cooks after it pressurizes. Depressurize it, put it on a plate, strip all the meat off of it that we want, put the meat in a bag, put the carcass in another bag, and then pour off all of the water, the juices, all the collagen, all the good stuff. So we've been collecting that. So I did that times 6. So what that gave us is all the carcasses here in these bags, and then all the boneless meat, kind of the rough pulled off meat that I've torn off the bone, about 1.5 bags of those. So cooked carcasses, cooked meat. Well, what we want to do is we want to take all of this meat and we want to make chicken noodle soup, but we want to make it so that it's something we can can. We're going to pressure can that soup. And that way, when we want to go to the pantry, we've got plenty of soup in stock. It's obviously much better because it doesn't have all the preservatives and all the junk in it that you would buy canned chicken noodle soup at the store. It's something that we can then take off the shelf, warm up, and then we're not going to can the noodles with it. So we can add our noodles. If you want to add rice, if you want to add some other ingredients, you can do so at that point. But you got the majority of it taken care of. So it's not as simple as opening a can of Campbell's soup and pouring it in a pot, but it's pretty darn close, and of course much, much better for you. So you may be wondering, hey, wow, Troy, I didn't realize you were so handy in the kitchen. I'm not. My wife is actually behind the camera, and she's helping me through all of this. So she's my support and camera woman right now. So the goal will be to take these 6 birds and hopefully turn them into quite a few meals that will have quite a bit of shelf stability, and take a tough old bird and turn it into something tasty. So another thing that will come from this as well, we've got some of in this pan here, we've got a lot of the stock that came out, but we're also, we're going to be working on making our soup. I got to cut my chicken to size and bite-sized pieces, all that, and make sure I got all the gristle and the beaks and the toenails out of it, of course. We're going to go ahead and get some chicken stock going as well, because these carcasses can go around again and produce a whole bunch of good quality chicken broth to be used in other soups and stews and projects that we do. So let's get that started, and we'll start cutting up some chicken. All right, so we're going to start with our last chicken here, so we're going to toss him in. Get him to lay down. He's evidently has a question to ask here, so we'll get him to... No more questions. So that's one carcass, and some skin and bits and all that type of stuff, and we're going to toss another carcass in there as well. Here's the leg. Here's another leg. This is a 3-legged chicken. Here's another leg. Oh, that's right. I kind of mixed them up a little bit. There's a wang. Now, what was interesting with these old birds, their thigh joints were so tough and so sinewy. So it wasn't scrapping to try to get all the meat off of that, because I didn't want to be given a whole bunch of sinew in that process. So we're going to get that nice and full there. And my lovely assistant went ahead and cut up some carrots for me. It's a big old chunk of carrots. Here's some garlic. You can never have enough garlic. And a big old frozen and a big old hunk of frozen onion that I discovered that when you use half an onion, you don't freeze the other half because it's almost impossible to dice up. So Kelly saved that one for me. So we'll toss that in there, and we're going to fill water up to our fill line. So adding water, splashing it all over the place. We'll need several of those. Put the lid on, and we're doing soup broth. Going to turn off the keep warm. Make sure we put it on pressurize. And so that's going to run for about an hour. Just let it do its thing, and then we can go over here and start making soup. That's a bucket of chicken. All right, so it's the next day, and we stopped making soup because I miscalculated the amount of carrots we need to make army pot size amount of soup. But we did continue boiling down or cooking down all of our carcasses. So we produced, you see this is I think this is a 5-6 gallon bucket cooking pot, and we have that about half full of bone broth. So we're going to start there and get all of that canned up. So Kelly's getting our canning jars ready, and we'll do that. But she's also, this has absolutely nothing to do with canning, but she's also making a blueberry cobbler here in the cast iron, so we can enjoy that. It was Mom's birthday last week, but since I was having health issues, we couldn't do that. So we're going to do that with Mom and Dad. So as we can, we're going to also celebrate and eat some good dessert.
Baby teleport.
So we'll pressure can this, correct?
Yes.
And then this, how long do you normally keep this on the shelf?
You can keep it on the shelf for a couple years, I would assume, but we never have it last that long. We go through a lot of chicken broth.
So with those 6 rooster carcasses, again, I'm not 100% sure if this is 6 or 5 gallon. It's taller than a 5 gallon bucket. It seems like it's just a little bit narrower, but we'll just say 5.5 gallons. So we had about half full with broth that we created, which, let me do my high school math. What is that? That's 2 3/4? Yeah, somewhere around there. So 2 3/4 gallons that we're going to put in quart jars. So it's really neat to see that just 6 chicken carcasses can produce this much broth that we'll use in other cooking going forward. And then Mom and I have been diligently cutting up all of our carrots and celery that we need for our soup. So once we get pressure canner going with the broth, then we'll start cooking down our soup in the same pot. So we got to get this pot emptied, obviously, which is going to take a while. So it's going to take us a lot of jars. I'm curious to see how many we do. So, Kelly, what's our target on this pressure canner? How long and how high pressure?
Well, right now we're just making the steam go through the spout for about 10 minutes. But anyway, it's going to be, we're going to keep it, bring it up to 11 pounds of pressure for 25 minutes for quarts.
Don't drop him, Kelly. So don't drop him.
Don't drop them. I just hope I don't bonk them.
Looks good.
Spitting at you.
Don't let it spit at you. Now cut that out. Goodness. This is why we leave them in the pan for a while.
So you would have left the lid on and let it lay in there for a bit.
No, I would take the lid off, and I usually just let them come down a bit more in temperature before I take them out. But since we're going to use it right away,
Yeah.
that's why I did that.
So it never pays to be in a hurry, does it?
Exactly.
So somebody's going to have to clean chicken broth off the wall.
So this is the stock that we're going to use for the chicken noodle soup. So we're going to go ahead and get that on the stove and heat it up so we can add the vegetables.
And chicken. We'll do chicken too.
Vegetables and chicken.
How much was that? 40? It's about 44 cups.
That was about 42 cups? 44 cups?
Yeah, 44.
You're going to have to.
Okay. I'll do it.
I can do it.
You got it? Oh my goodness. That's a big pot.
I think a Mustang.
Yeah.
Wait, don't let that boil over. Just take a little.
I said, what was the time for the last I saw.
All right, so we're adding the carrots. Chili. And that's a bucket of chicken right there.
That might be too much.
It's never too much
Is
chicken.
it going to splash on me?
Probably.
Ow.
That's hot. Hot pan. Hot pot. Feel like we're running a prison camp here or something. This is what I want to cut directly to right here is this.
Me too.
Skip all of this and go straight to the cobbler.
Right.
All right, so we're gonna get this up to a boil and simmer for 15 minutes. And then we'll start canning that.
He's probably already bought the bag, marked the tag.
I doubt it.
Yeah, right. Oh, look at the chicken noodles. With no noodles.
Now just do broth.
Broth roast that.
That's a whole lot of head of meat.
He just run his ditch line, I guess,
Okay,
his
and then-
tractor.
That's a head
This
space.
is a ditch line.
Stop there.
We'll break
Yeah,
it.
yeah, definitely. Might even be a smidge over.
Congratulations already.
So now we put the lid on.
You know it's 11 pounds pressure, we just don't have long.
Long life Mason. 5,000 rounds, I believe.
How'd you cut your thing?
Oh, I was trying to show off how sharp I got my cleaver. So I was right here, sharpening up my cleaver, showing Kelly how good an edge I can get on it. Laid out the cutting board, put a pineapple on its side, and did the old chop through the pineapple, through the cutting board, and took a chunk out of the countertop.
Gracious.
She's like, that's nice and sharp,
It is
dummy.
sharp.
She's like, you have proved just how sharp it is.
Yep.
So you can get epoxy to repair it, but you got to color match it and all that.
Coach, you are you having pie?
I'm not recording you having pie. I'm recording you having your second piece of pie.
That's not true. It's just a little bit.
Ah, the truth comes out. This is what kills productivity around here at Red Tool House. Is
Pie.
somebody makes too good of desserts. All right, so we're doing our second batch of chicken soup, and we're doing a 10-minute burn at 15 psi, and we've got 7 jars in this batch. Obviously, we had 7 in the first, so we're going to end up with 14 jars of soup, and then this pot over here is a remainder, which that is going to come out to be a dinner's worth for the 4 of us. So we're not going to can that. We're going to keep that for tomorrow night's dinner. That way, it's not, since it's not a full run through a full canner. So it's getting late. This thing's about ready to time out. We're going to shut it down and let it depressurize, of course. And in the morning, we can sort everything out. But tomorrow, I want to go over just the details of this and kind of look at the economy of this. And it's something that fascinates me. Again, canning's been around for a very long time, but it's something that just fascinates me, the inexpensive way to put up a lot of food, store a lot of calories. So we'll dive into that a little bit more tomorrow. Okay, so the next day I want to do a summary of what we ended up with. And if you're wondering why I'm wearing a hat inside, today's my day to work from home. And I didn't want to scare you guys. So what we ended up with is 14 quarts of chicken noodle soup. Obviously, sans the noodles. We don't have the noodles in there. And then 6 additional quarts of really, really potent bone broth. This is the good stuff. It was first run. Now, we could have actually taken those carcasses probably back around once or even twice. I know people do that and produce even more broth or bone stock, that type of stuff. But we decided just to stop there. And we actually had a serving last night for dinner. We had chicken noodle soup, some stuff that was left over that wasn't enough to really can. So we had that for dinner. And I was really impressed with how tender the dark meat on those roosters were, because we were picking it off the bone. It was everything we could do to get that off of the bone. It was just, that's the old saying, tough old bird, right? So, but I was really excited, really happy with how tender that turned out. We think one of these quarts is basically 2 servings. So for a family of 4, we'll go through 2 at a time. This will be something great we'll be able to put on the shelf and use whenever we need to. So since that went so well, since today's my day to work from home and I'm doing a lot of copywriting and market research for a client, and then that allows me to kind of have some things going on in the background. So we also had some carcasses from last year's processing where we did our broiler chickens, our Cornish cross, and we cut all of the select cuts off of it. So it's just the actual carcass there, wingtips, that type of stuff, neck. And we bagged those up in the freezer for future use for broth. So I told Kelly, well, since I got the canning equipment out and all that, she's away doing her 1 day a week work at the nonprofit, then I'll go ahead and get the Instapot going. I can put 3 carcasses in there at a time, generate some broth. Already got our first batch generated. The leftover bones and everything are going into the bucket to end up in the compost bin. That beeping you hear is the microwave. That's a pork roast that I'm making for dinner tonight. I've become quite the domesticated individual. Actually, Cameron's probably going to do most of the work, but it looks good for me to say that, hey, here's what we did for dinner. So when Kelly comes home, she's got a nice home-cooked meal. Anyway, so 3 more birds in the Instant Pot. We'll get the broth off of it. We'll do 3 more birds, 3 more carcasses in the Instant Pot. So again, remember, these are just bones, meatless birds, basically, in the Instant Pot. And we should have... we'll probably double, maybe even a little bit more than what we had last run in that, with that many birds. So it's kind of one of those things, hey, we got the process rolling, let's just keep it going. It's a rainy, gloomy day again, so might as well do some stuff inside. So an actual cost analysis of this would be a little tricky to do because there's so many variables in it. And if you really wanted to compare it toward, hey, why don't you just go to the store and buy some soup, then that's not going to be an apples to apples comparison. It's we like to think, or we hope, that our quality of our soup is much greater quality than what you would get at the store with condensed soup. This, of course, will be shelf stable for a while. A year to 18 months is what I've read, and I'm sure people go even longer. But to me, this is more of like almost like maybe permaculture if we wanted to be contemporary, but almost like your grandma taught you to not to waste anything. So going back to what we had, we had these roosters that we had incubated, hoping they would all be hens, but knowing that we were going to end up with roosters. We didn't sex them early, so we let them grow out and do their thing, eat grass and hang out and have a good rooster life. And then when it was time to, hey, we just need to get rid of them. There's too many. They're starting to become aggressive to one another. It's time to, they're all crowing. There's nothing worse than 14 roosters crowing all at once. So what do? Do I slit their throats and toss them to the pigs? Do I slit their throats, toss them on the compost bin? There's those options, but why waste? Try to maximize as much as we can out of what the blessings we've been given with God's creation. So naturally, it just makes sense. At that time, we processed them, put them in the freezer, as I mentioned, and now we've turned them into wholesome food, whereas they wouldn't have been very edible if we'd have tried to fry them up. So just a little bit of time we had. Of course, your jars, you can get jars anywhere. I say that. Post-COVID, all this stuff is tough to come by, it seems, but we've been stockpiling jars for a long time and lids for a long time. So if you have these things hanging out in your cellars and you got that already, we're literally looking at a bag of carrots, a bag of onions, a couple cloves of garlic, and just time. The equipment, of course. You got to have the pressure canner. You don't want to. What I've read is you don't want to water bath chicken soup. You definitely want to do pressure can. But that initial investment of that canner pays dividends throughout the year or for years with producing this food. So the way I look at this is we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 servings, so seven meals for our family as we need to, and then of course base stock for other meals. This roast that I'm doing calls for some broth, so some of this broth we're making right now will end up in the roast as well. So it's just one of those things. If you've got the time, there's not a lot of expertise to it. I know people get really intimidated by pressure canners, and just make sure it's in good condition and use it appropriately, and don't walk off and leave it, and you should be okay. But we're really excited with what turned out here, and hope to continue canning even more as we progress through this year, and hopefully have good production with the garden and our other farm efforts. Well, comment below. Let me know what your favorite thing to can is, or maybe what's the most crazy thing you've canned. I know some people really get out there and they kind of push the boundaries of canning. In fact, I think there's even a Facebook group that's kind of like, illegal canning or something like that, where people push the boundaries. But comment below. Let me know what you guys like to can, or maybe a memory you've had of canning with your parents or your grandma, or maybe some of you guys even have a story of where you blew the canner through the ceiling of the kitchen. Hopefully that's not the case, but I know there's some of those stories out there. We appreciate everybody watching. And again, I can't stress enough, I thank everybody for the well wishes and the prayers as I was dealing with anxiety. There'll be some more conversation about that later on as we get some more things figured out. But it's a great day, feeling good. Things are kind of back to normal. And I really appreciate it. It just humbles me to know that there's people not only across the country, but across the world praying for me and my family. So that means a lot to me. God bless. Take care.